For 89 years, they have been the training ground, the cheerleader, and the voice of Utah's elected county officers. Yet few of us have ever heard of them. The Utah Association of Counties is our topic on the county seat today. UAC, as it's known, was established in 1924 to help newly elected county officials learn the ropes of their jobs in Utah's then 27 counties. Since then, UAC has expanded their mission to include lobbying and representation for the counties, continuing education and certification for many county positions. They regularly meet across the state to provide forums needed for exchange of ideas between Utah's counties, and to offer many programs to help counties pool their resources to better serve their individual citizens. But most important is their role as the unified voice of the counties before the Utah State Legislature, the U.S. Congress, Governor Herbert, and the array of federal bureaucrats and administrators whose action can often directly have an important impact on the counties. Today on the county seat, we will hear from the executive director and legal team from UAC to give a report card on how the Utah State Legislature served the interests of the state's most important subdivision, the counties. Welcome to the county seat today. I'm your host, Chad Booth. We are going to do a runs, hits, and errors review of the Utah State Legislative session, at least from a county's perspective. Joining us for our conversation today are three members of the Utah Association of Counties team. We have Mark Ward, who is their public lands attorney, Adam Trupp, who's part of their legal counsel team, and the executive director, Brent Gardner. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Part of what UAC does is they sponsor bills that are favorable to the counties. The county governments all have some input. You represent them officially up here. What did you put in this year that you consider was a success?
Well, one bill that comes to mind addresses the problem of where is the intersection between law enforcement of county sheriffs and law enforcement of federal officers. We had a bill sponsored by Representative Noel that I think clarifies that and sets some real definable boundaries for what laws are enforced by sheriffs and what laws are not enforced by federal BLM and Forest Service officers. So this Utah Sheriff's Association sponsored that bill as well, and we're hopeful that that will reduce some of the friction that has arisen between those two law enforcement agencies.
Really, this grew out of the fact that the federal officers adopted into their own code of records duplicates of the Utah laws.
That's right.
And then started enforcing them, but then that throws it into a federal court jurisdiction to be solved.
It subjects our citizens to a whole different way of being prosecuted than what's afforded under state law. Sheriffs felt like that was their domain. Hopefully this bill will provide a path forward to clear up that confusion.
Taking that down the road one step further, jail funding has always been a big issue for UAC, and I know you guys were on the offensive on that this year too. How'd that turn out?
Yeah, very well. We always seeking help from the legislature to fund their prisoners that they force us to take or they contract with us to take, contracting and reimbursement prisoners. We succeeded in getting $1 million of new money into the conditional probation contract to the prisoners, and $2.7 million for contracting prisoners. So we did very well.
On that $1 million, I know this has been an issue as you've looked at this before, is they'll find a pool of one-time money, and you've been looking for an ongoing resolution so that you don't have to fight so hard for this each year. Which category does this fall into?
It's ongoing money. So in the conditional probation, we now have $12 million out of the 16 that it's costing us of ongoing money. So far we've been able to convert all of the one-time money over to ongoing funding.
That still leaves it at kind of a shortfall compared to the rate for contract, doesn't it?
Well, contract is short as well, but conditional probation is shorter, if that's the correct word. Less funded according to the statute than is contracting.
Well, at least it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, we're happy with it. We also had some success in human service funding as well, so when we're talking appropriations, that's been a big area of succeeding.
And would you talk about that a little bit so people understand what we're talking?
Absolutely. The state and the counties together partner to cover treatment services for folks with mental illness and for substance use disorders. And they did step up this year and provide some additional new funding. We actually ended up with $6.5 million coming into treatment services and to help us to provide those services in our communities. It's a definite need, and it's a need that doesn't seem to diminish. It seems to stay steady or grow depending on the size of the population growing. So it was a very good outcome this year. Still plenty of work, and we'll have to be able to come back and show that we did something productive with that money. But it's a good message from the legislature.
Is it kind of hard to push through things that aren't like sexy and don't get a lot of dialogue?
It absolutely is. I think we all see that from a lot of the issues we do deal with. So it can be, but that's part of the point of making your message heard and understood.
Not many people care about some of the other programs that we're tied to the state closely with.
That's true, but it's very much so every bit as important to a community to have a balanced community and support. So it's good that they're paying attention to it. Listen, we're going to take a break right now from the county seat. We will come back with our conversation of a wrap-up of the legislative session with our friends from the Utah Association of Counties. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this commercial break.
Almost 45% of the oil produced in Utah, 7.8 million barrels, comes from Duchesne County. That oil feeds our state economy, provides job growth, and supports local business. Here in Duchesne County, we're working to make Utah an economic, cultural, and technological leader. Whether you're here for business or pleasure, Duchesne County will welcome you with open arms and invite you to explore all the beauty of the Uinta Mountains. Duchesne County, close enough for business, far enough to get away.
How would you spend an extra day in Utah Valley? Stay one more day. Visit utahvalley.com to make reservations. Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Who is it?
It's me, honey. My key's not working. Can you let me in?
Did you get your whooping cough booster shot?
No, I forgot. I'll get it tomorrow.
Then that's when you can come in.
What?
Whooping cough can cause permanent disability in our baby. We're not taking that chance.
I know, but I'm...
Your dinner's on the porch.
Help us stop whooping cough. Visit us online to find out where you and your family can get vaccinated.
Unlimited opportunity for adventure is closer than you think. It's all about knowing where to look and when to act. Get ready to grab the steering wheel and put your pedal to the metal as Millard County Raceway presents Dirt Track Racing at the Millard County Fairgrounds in Delta, Utah. Go to millardcountyraceway.com for more information. Pick your adventure in Millard County.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today has been about the Utah legislative session. From a county perspective, no better panel to bring to you than members of the Utah Association of Counties. So we talked about a couple of the things that you were able to initiate and get through the legislature, and that's always a part of it, but it's not just being on the offensive, as if you're putting it in game terms, it's also being on the defensive. What were you able to block this year, or what issues did you have to attend to?
Well, that list is pretty long. So I think just to pick out a couple, we succeeded in delaying, if not stopping. That remains to be seen where the end result goes with a bill that was filed to change the county's fiscal year from a calendar year to a July 1, June 30th fiscal year, which matches the state. That idea sounds good, but that's a huge undertaking because there's finance problems and logistic problems. So we succeeded in delaying that legislation. We've committed to work with the sponsor and see if that can actually be done, but my guess is that's going to take years to work out.
That's more than just a transitional problem of covering that 6-month gap to get moved from fiscal to or off calendar to fiscal. It does create ongoing problems, does it not?
It does, and it affects not only counties but about 400 special districts. So it's no minor issue, and we had struggled to get the legislature and particularly the sponsor to understand how difficult that transition really is.
Well, let's talk about the eminent domain. I mean, most people think, well, that's the bullies that came in and took ground to build a school. What kind of issues are we talking about?
Well, sometimes that's the way it works, but it's also a matter of counties providing important services to developments and subdivisions, such as sewage and roads, things that people take for granted. but there was an effort to try to take that ability away from the counties. And through, to make a long story short, we were able to stop that and preserve that ability for times when it's needed, not to try to bully private landowners, but where you already have established developments and so forth. If they need increased sewage service or transportation access, and counties still have a free hand to do that, thanks to what we did to try to stop an effort to take that away. So that's an example of something that we stopped that I think is beneficial to counties and their citizens.
Adam, what one were you involved in here?
Well, we had several that I worked on that dealt with private land use and development, and these seem to be bills that come up every year now as a result of an ongoing discussion and some tension between private property rights and the right and the need for county governments to sort of control to some extent what can be done on the land. We have this issue and this conflict a little bit more than they do within the cities and towns, because people choose to live in an unincorporated area as opposed to in a town or a city. And as a result, they want more flexibility. They don't want so much control. So we've got to try to work that balance between just allowing people free reign to do what they want, but not going too far.
In specific, this issue had to do with applying or adopting universal national or international codes and applying them and then not fitting the needs of the rural part of the state?
Correct. That was one of them. This was the year to update the statewide building and fire codes, and they're actually called the International Building Code, International Fire Code, because they are used nationwide and across the world. But the question was raised with a lot of our counties, especially the more rural counties, of why do we have to comply with these? Why does what works at the federal level or at the more urbanized areas have to apply to us? Why don't we have some leeway to make some changes and to amend it? So we're going to be working as we go forward, although that bill passed as it was written. We're going to be working as we go forward in time to say, let's get a little bit more rural voice into the discussion about how we adopt these codes, what can be done differently and what can be amended out. So it'll be an ongoing discussion. Once it's done, it's not necessarily done. So,
what else were you following?
Well, one aspect of a bill that we succeeded in changing, I guess stopped would be the correct terminology, was provisions in Senate Bill 72, which is a very major piece of legislation here dealing with the relocation of the prison. And we're certainly interested in following that relocation, want to be a part of that discussion. But we wanted to prevent the aspect of the bill which would allow privatization of prisons. That's something that our elected officials strongly oppose, don't think that's good for the citizens financially or otherwise, can't get rid of the liability that goes with it if you turn it over to private companies to manage those. So we put amendments in the House that were taken out, and the Senate's gone back and forth, but it looks like today finally we'll succeed in having those privatization options taken off the table, which is good.
Didn't we actually try that once as a state years ago?
We did, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems to me shipped a bunch of people off to Texas, and we had to bring them home or something. The counties have invested heavily in contracting and actually providing some of correction services. Was there concern that that may have fallen by the wayside?
No, I don't know that that's a concern as part of it. We certainly want to push that model forward when the state looks at relocating, because rather than build a very large state-owned, state-run facility or state-managed facility, if they choose to privatize that, I guess that's a story they can look at. But we would rather see them contract out far more of those prisoners than they have up to this point in time. Counties are willing to take them. We actually have excess capacity out there. We can take them right now. And so we're very much in favor of pushing the county, expanded county jail program with the state, and then ask the state to build a smaller facility that's only sized to handle maximum security rather than go beyond that.
Repeat offenders seem to fare better if they're in a county setting.
Right. Recidivism is lower at a public-run facility than at a private facility. That's one of the advantages to keeping it publicly owned, and we think the recidivism at the county facilities are better than they would be at a much larger facility for a variety of reasons, but smaller and local is usually better in most instances when you're talking about those kinds of issues where you got people that need to transition back into into the real world.
We're going to take a break right now. We'll come back to the county seat. We'll look forward at what the Utah Association of Counties has to do once the bill they've pushed is signed, because there's a great deal that doesn't end when they're signed and sent to the governor. We'll find out about that when we come back on the county seat.
Let's be honest, you don't know much about Beaver County. Well, let me tell you about it. It's the birthplace of outlaw Butch Cassidy and inventor Philo T. Farnsworth. Some of the best skiing in Utah is at Eagle Point. You've got camping, Canyon Breeze Golf Course, Crusher and the Tushers, Beaver Territorial Courthouse, snowmobiling, renewable energy, Pioneer Car Show, Squeaky Cheese, ghost towns to explore, best water in the country, Paiute ATV trails, Old Frisco Kilns, horse racing, hunting, fishing, and it's a good place to live. Beaver County, mountains of fun. I could tell you more, but why don't you come and see it for yourself?
I didn't order this. Compliments of the lady in gold. Hello, trouble.
Anything worth doing in this quiet little town?
You look like the kind of man that could show a girl a good time.
You strike me as the kind of girl that likes a manicure and a massage.
How's that for a manicure?
I hate golf.
I was hoping for something a little more vigorous.
Vigorous, I can do.
And I thought you'd be riding side saddle.
What? I'm gonna regret this. How about that manicure?
I'm here to see my grandbaby.
Well, did you get your whooping cough booster shot? You can't see the baby without it.
Well,
Your other option is on the porch.
Find out where you can get vaccinated at stopwhoopingcough.org.
Welcome back to the county seat. We've been doing a legislative wrap-up. You know, just prior to us starting the show, we were kind of talking about what we're going to talk about here today. And it came up that, you know, most people think that a group that's lobbying or petitioning the legislature comes up, puts in their ideas of the bills, blocks bills, they're passed, they pack up, and they go off and golf for the next 9.5 months. But that's really not the case, is it?
No.
What happens after? Why isn't the bill done when it's passed by the...
Well, there are typically some sort of outcomes, some sort of repercussions from almost any bill that passes, and frequently from bills that don't pass too. Because we serve an association of all the counties and all the elected officials, we end up having to make sure that we get out and clarify with everybody what did take place, provide education or support educational efforts on every piece of law that did change or may have raised questions. So we have a good deal of educational work to do after we do our digesting the bills work that we didn't get done during the session. So we continually are looking at what needs to happen and coordinating with groups out there to do training on what is new in the law.
It's pretty much a year-round process now. We get through with the session, as Adam indicates. There's a lot of time spent educating and training as to what took place, and then you're almost right back into the mode of drafting and looking at new issues and trying to prepare things for the next session.
On that list of training and educating, is the governor one of those ones that needs to be brought up to speed on county's perspective, because the bills have to go to him next?
He may be, yeah. It depends on the bill specifically. We're fortunate to have a governor that's got a lot of background in county government, and that helps us. We don't need to spend as much time as we may with others. But frankly, I don't see a lot of legislation there that's going to require us to deal specifically with the governor.
Part of what happens post-session is, okay, the bill takes effect. All right, let's see how it works. Let's see how the stakeholders in the bill fare. And so, you know, an example would be on that law enforcement bill I talked about earlier. You know, let's see how it works for the sheriffs, and then assess whether additional tweaks are needed next year. So it's you pass it, you implement it, you see how it works, you come back for more.
How long does it typically take to get feedback on something like that?
Well, you know,
it varies.
It does vary. I'll say there's a bill today that will likely pass that allows people in an area that is subject to a rezoning to object to the decision by the Planning and Zoning Committee. Well, that bill may take 2 years before anybody actually files a petition to object. And so we're not going to really know what the impacts are, whether it's effective, whether people are heard better, until that petition's filed and until the legislative body has to consider it. So it may not be a long time, it may not be ever.
Sometimes there's a process actually contained in the legislation. For example, on the prison relocation bill, they're setting up a board with some authority to actually look at a whole host of issues pertaining to relocation, which we have to get involved in. We're going to have to sit through those meetings. We're going to have to appoint people to those committees. We're going to have to offer our input into that process. So that's an ongoing process.
That was one issue you were fighting for too, is to make sure the counties were involved in that process.
Yeah. So the issues really vary. They can go from anything till it's done, we don't have to spend much time, to something like that where we're going to be spending the next few years actually involved in a process that is going to require quite a bit of attention.
Some bills are a step forward, and it may not be all that the county wants. And so you take a small step forward, assess, and maybe come back for more next year.
What is the most challenging part? I mean, going forward, is it harder to obtain information as to how the bill is working, or is it harder to do the educational side of it, to let elected officials know what their new duties are?
The hardest part that we probably all struggle with is developing what a consensus position is, given the range of opinion we have across the state and the different interests that we have on any one piece of legislation.
Or assessing the impact of something after it's passed, to know where to do the training or how extensive the issues really are that are associated with it.
The coordination of all that diversity, really.
We're going to take a break. We'll come back with a wrap-up of this show, and we'll see what's ahead in the future. We'll be right back.
The best part about raising children here in Vernal and the Uinta Basin is just the smaller community that makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody.
It's not too big, it's not too small. We're close to the Wasatch Front if there's anything we need out there.
The support is unbelievable. Even though you don't have a kid playing high school football, you go to Friday night football.
My job has offered me the ability to college educate all 3 of my children.
My father, he was an engineer for Chevron, retired 39 some odd years. And Jeff, my husband, it's the same way. He's always worked in the oil and gas, always had a job here.
It's a wonderful place to play because there's a lot of variety between hunting, fishing.
And the beautiful mountains, and Flaming Gorge is just a short distance away.
One of the big reasons why I live where I live is I'm able to run up to a beautiful place like this and spend some good quality time.
There's always plenty to do in Uinta County.
In San Rafael country, you'll discover more adventure and excitement than you can imagine. And it's only 2 hours from the Wasatch Front. Find gorges that descend thousands of feet, trails that go on forever, and the solitude of finding a place all your own. Emery County and the San Rafael Swell. We're closer than you think.
How would you spend an extra day in Utah Valley? Stay one more day. Visit utahvalley.com to make reservations. Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're having a discussion today about the legislative session from a county perspective, and we have talked about what the UAC was able to accomplish. We've talked about the things and areas we blocked, and now we want to turn our attention to the legislature itself. Does each one of these groups, when they meet and start, they've come off of elections, and so this is like the first session that some of these guys have operated in. Does the personality change of the body in whole?
Oh, it certainly does.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this session we've got a whole group of new legislators in the House in particular. So it takes some time to see what their inclinations are and Obviously, they have to have information that a lot of the veterans don't have in the body, so you have to spend time there. We have a new Senate president. That dramatically, in my view, has changed what's happened with legislation in the Senate, and also some of the relationships back and forth between the House and the Senate. So yeah, they're all pretty unique.
Can leadership actually change the entire mood of the entire body?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Give me an example. You don't have to use any names. You can.
Well, the one body can be more resistive to cooperating with the other body, or they can be more cooperative. At this session, I think there's been a greater cooperation between the two. That isn't to say they don't have their own priorities sometimes, but haven't seen the back and forth sometimes that we see.
Leadership can really help to keep the body on task, and that does make a difference. It's very easy to get off into the stratosphere with a lot of bills that people really want to put out there but don't produce a lot. On the other hand, the leadership can also say, well, we'll do some of that, but we really have some things we need to accomplish this year. We're going to make sure we get them done. I think that's happened very well this year.
You know, the number one thing that I hear from people that don't participate in this process is that leadership only allows the bills that they individually want out, and that if they don't do it, you're not going to see it. But it would seem to me that there's more to it than that.
There is.
That's a factor. It's a factor, but it's not the only factor. Like, for example, we have a fairly new Senate Majority Leader, Ralph Okerlund. And for a lot of the work I do, it's more rural centric than urban. And that bodes well to have someone like Senator Okerlund there in leadership. Bodes well for rural interests, because Senator Okerlund is a rural legislator. So to a certain extent, the agenda will shift a little more favorably for rural interests because of Senator Okerlund being there.
But if you didn't have that leadership, then you get back to the stratosphere model then, where...
Well, even with that leadership, it flares up. That would be my characterization of it. It's not there constantly, except in the budget process. There's no doubt leadership is guiding that whole budget process as it goes along. But we have a bill, for example, this session, which we filed, worked over the summer with Senate sponsor to get it through. Worked its way through quite easily till it got to one of the bodies, and then leadership put a stop to it for a reason we don't know really at this point in time. We're going to have to find out what the objection to it was.
That's got to be pretty frustrating on that.
It's definitely frustrating, because we have a group of elected officials who feel like they got some serious problems they need to address, and now we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what went wrong in terms of leadership's point of view and why they didn't want to support it. Find out what we can do.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The County Seat, our wrap-up of the legislative session. We'd like to invite you to watch us online, thecountyseat.tv. Remember that county government is the government that affects your life the most. So tell your friends about it, invite them to watch, and we appreciate your comments if you go to our Facebook page. We'll see you next week on The County Seat.